All right. Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Office Hours here on LinkedIn Learning. I'm Drew Boyd, and it's a pleasure to have you. I'm looking at the people signing in here. We're getting folks from all over. Dean Carroll is with us. I'm going to talk a little bit about Dean in a minute. And we have people from over in Europe. We have people from here in the U.S. I see some fellow Cincinnatians here, some of my students. So it's great to see you. Office hours, I think, is just such a really great aspect of LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning, of course, I'm an author for LinkedIn Learning. And office hours is a way for authors to come on live and stream with you and interact with you. And there are a ton of experts out there on LinkedIn Learning. If you haven't checked it out, you probably have if you're joining me here. And so what I wanted to do is make sure you were aware of this. Go to LinkedIn Learning and check out office hours. These things happen almost every day, and you're going to see quite a few interesting folks out there. Speaking of which, I wanted to call your attention to a couple of my fellow authors. I think what I'm going to do each week is highlight an author on LinkedIn Learning that I think you would find interesting. And the two that I wanted to call out in particular, Dean Carroll. I think Dean's on here. I see Dean. And check out his courses. If you're in the sales profession, you've got to be looking at his courses. He has something like 14 courses out there, and he really rocks it. So check out what Dean is up to. And Laura Burgels is also just a wonderful author. I've watched her courses before, especially on things like speaking, professionally speaking, which I do, and some other things, crisis management. She's really a pro when it comes to building your presence and some other skills as well. She has skills on Scrivener, which is a method that I use, or an application I use for writing books. So check out Laura. And those are two of the authors I wanted to highlight this week, and I'll continue to bring your attention to other authors here on LinkedIn Learning that I think just do a great job. So I wanted to get into this thing today called task unification. You're probably thinking, what the heck is task unification? And it is a fascinating technique, one of the 5 techniques of this method called systematic inventive thinking, or SIT. And SIT, you see the logo for them there. It stands for Systematic Inventive Thinking as the method, but it's also a company based in Tel Aviv. And it is my friends and colleagues like Yoni Stern and Amnon Levov and Erez Tasalik, who I think was joining us today. And these are the people that I learned SIT from. They're the people that really taught me this method and helped me really perfect my skills in it. And now it's something I teach to my students, and I teach to companies, and I work with SIT. I do some projects with them occasionally, and they're just a great group of people. So be sure to check out their website at site.com. So these are the 5 techniques, and task unification is the one we're going to focus on today, and I'm going to keep my eyes peeled here for the comments just to see what's going on there. And I'll stay involved because I'm going to put you to work. I hate to say it. You thought you were just going to be able to chime in and listen, but I'm going to get you to type in some things in the chat function here in the comment section on LinkedIn, because we're going to practice task unification live. And if you have a question, if you would do me a favor, just go ahead, if you would, put the letter Q in front of it, like that. Put the letter Q so I can call it out, and my team member, Darla, can call it out too if need be. And we don't want to miss your questions. Good. So let's go ahead and get started. And let me tell you about this task unification technique. The definition of task unification goes like this. Task unification is when you assign an additional job to an existing resource. And I think a good way to introduce it is with a quick story, a story we like to tell a lot about Thomas Edison, the famous inventor whose picture you see here. And Thomas, as you probably know, was a very successful inventor. He had hundreds of patents, and he made a lot of money. He owned several homes. One of the homes, the one in New Jersey, I believe, To get into this home, you had to go through a gate like the one you see here. But there was something odd about this gate. And odd meaning that when you tried to go through it, you had to kind of like push it really hard to get it open. And then when you went through it, you had to, kind of push it back to get it into place. And it just, it was like, what's going on here? Thomas Edison, fix your gate. And so the story goes is that the reason it was so hard to push and pull is that good old Thomas had attached a pump, a water pump to the gate, so that every time it opened and closed, it was pumping fresh water into the plumbing system of his house. Now, to be honest, we don't know if the story is true, but it's a heck of a story to introduce this tool that I'm sharing with you today called task unification. Task unification is when we take a function, take a component of the world, of the environment, and we force it to do something it wasn't designed to do. And here are the steps to task unification. We always use task unification, and again, we're going to do this in a minute, so stay sharp here, stay with me. To use task unification, we start by listing the internal and external components of the things in the immediate vicinity. So, for example, in the case of Thomas's gate, we would list things like the gate, maybe the hinges, the locks, and things like that. And in that example, what has been assigned, what has been task unified, the gate has been given the additional job of activating the pump. A second component, though, in that story is also involved. It would be called an external component, an example of a component that's still there, but you don't necessarily control it. And that would be the visitors to Thomas. They have their original job of visiting Thomas at his house and being his friend, but now they have the additional job of opening and closing the gate. So task unification starts by listing the components, and again, we're going to do an example in a minute. We take one of those components and we assign it an additional job, something it wasn't designed to do. That could be a function of another component. That could be something else. But the idea now is to create that configuration and try to visualize it. Try to really see it. Because that's the point where you are going to experience a condition that we all have called fixedness. Fixedness is a cognitive bias that makes it very hard for us to imagine a component doing something other than what it was designed to do. And so you have to visualize. You have to stop and really bear down on this and think, what do I have here? We'll probably see fixedness in a minute when we try this in live streaming. Now, once you visualize it, I like to think of it as the fun part starts. When you look at this crazy configuration that you've made, you ask yourself, and always start with this simple question: should we do it? Is there a benefit to it? Would anybody want this? Could it be useful in certain situations? Is there a market for it? We always start by seeking the beneficial reasons, not whether it's viable at that point. That doesn't matter if there's no benefits. So we always start with should we, and then we go to the next question, which is can we do it? Do we have the know-how? Do we have the intellectual property? Do we have the material, the science to be able to do this? Are there legal barriers? And then finally, you can do what we call modify. You can start to tweak this idea to try to improve it and make it something, very viable and interesting. So I'm going to turn over here to my comment section. And here's what I want you to do in the comments. As I look through these, I see some old names. I see Steve Pearson, an old colleague from J&J. Steve, nice to see you. What I want you to do now for me is let's recommend a product to me. Let's recommend a product. Put a product up there that you would like to apply task unification to. And I'm going to be a little choosy here. I didn't prepare this ahead of time, so I don't know what you're going to give me. So let's do it live. Let's do it together. Who would like to suggest a product, maybe something that everybody knows, not something that maybe only you know in your company, something very technical. Who has an idea for a product, or it could be a service too, for that matter, that we would like to innovate? Any suggestions? Any suggestions for a product that we want to use as an example? If not, I'll make one up. But I wanted one of you to come up with something that we might use. Who has an idea? Don't be bashful. Come on, tell me. Nobody's going to suggest something here. Let me see. I'll give it another second or two for anybody at all to suggest a product. Don't worry about it being too weird or too hard. We'll deal with that. What sayeth thou? Anything that comes to mind? Boy, I thought you'd be interested in seeing something innovated in real time here. Who has something? Okay, so Ahmad, thank you. A computer, good idea, such as a MacBook Pro. We could do a computer. We could, or an iPad, like the one I'm using right here for the presentation. Okay, let's go with iPad. Ahmad, thank you. We're going to go ahead and try to innovate using task unification, just the iPad. And I have the iPad 11 Pro here. But what we do now is the following. We have to start by listing the components of an iPad. Now, it happens to be right here in my hand, so I'm going to go ahead and start with, we have, of course, the screen. We have the on-off button. We have a camera. We have volume controls. We have a port, a charging port. Oops. What else do we have here? We have the pen, and we have the pen charging area. Okay? So the way we do this now is we start with a list like this. This is pretty simplistic, but let's go ahead and try it. And again, I'm going to get you to help me here. But now what we do is we randomly pick a component. And so I'm going to see if anybody wants to pick a number for me between 1 and 7. I don't want to do it because I want you to see how this works live in a live scenario. So go ahead and pick a number for me between 1 and 7. I don't care what it is. Pick anything. But do me a favor. Pick it randomly. Don't pick something that you already have an idea for. Because then you're not really using the method the way it could be used. It's designed to be used. Okay, good old Ahmad. He's on it. Oh, Kim, Ahmad, if you don't mind, I'm going to let Kim Waldorf. Kimberly Waldorf is at a company called Logicalls. Kim suggested number 5. And Ahmad, since you got the glory of suggesting the iPad, I'm going to let Kim suggest number 5 here. Okay, so what Kim has suggested is the port. All right, so that's the thing here at the bottom of the screen. You probably all know it's very similar to a smartphone, the charging port. But it's also charging and data transfer and things like that. Now, here's the fun part. What we do is we say to ourselves, the port has the additional job, not the new job. It has its old job and it has the additional job of fill in the blank. Now, what that could be is we could pick a component and force the port to do the job of that additional component. I'm going to make it up. Let's imagine the port has the additional job of the camera. Now, that is very strange. That is very, very weird. But it's also perfect. And here's why. You were all sitting there thinking, now, Drew, this is ridiculous. How could the port of the iPad do functions related to the camera. That's silly. But here's why it's perfect. I want you to think about what is creativity after all. What is the act of creation? And I like to describe it as this, and other people too, not just me. Creativity happens when two previously unrelated themes suddenly collide. You take two things that didn't belong together and you mash them up. And so we've just done that here. We've taken the port of the iPad and the camera of the iPad and brought them together to create some new function. And as strange as it sounds, what I want you to do is to type into the comments now, what would be the benefit of that? What's happening there? It sounds strange, but I want you to overcome your fixedness and try to think of a useful configuration, a benefit. What could the charging port be doing related to the camera or related to it? So I'm going to track our comment section over here, and I'm going to be looking for you to think of some ideas. I'm coming up with some ideas myself. Let's see what we have here. How could the charging port be engaged somehow with the camera? Today they're kind of separate. You know, we have the camera ports back here. And then Abdul Rahman is a senior business analyst. You know, it could be some sort of spy camera, or maybe not spying as untoward, but maybe there's a camera at the end here. What would be so here's the idea. The camera traditionally on these units has been back here. And now maybe this thing is going to have a camera. Why couldn't a camera be in the edge here? Would there be some benefit maybe to document scanning? What if there was some camera element here that gave you a way to take certain types of pictures that you couldn't do with this because of its size or its profile or its footprint? Another idea from Ujas Doshi. He's at MSCI Inc. and use it as an authentication, kind of using a face biometrics. Maybe it's something, I think he's thinking something like this. Or it's some sort of thing that maybe you have to insert an authenticator in there to be able to use the camera. Maybe you're in a certain situation. Maybe, for example, what if there's a way to deactivate cameras in high security areas or places where you didn't want cameras taken? Okay, here's a nice idea by Daniel. He's at the IT Help Desk Associates. Okay, great. Gestures wave the camera operate the charging point to turn a plugged-in item off or on. That runs on the iPad battery. Okay, very nice. So what he's imagining now is imagine we have a cable in here. It's in the charging port. But we wave our hand in front of the camera or something activates it. Maybe motion activates some powered element through the charging port to give us a new functionality. Oh, wow. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't prepare this ahead of time. And so you can see very quickly, just working with a group of you joining me this morning, we're able to envision some interesting ideas related to the iPad using task unification. It really is that simple. Now, what I want to do is, first of all, thanks to those of you that suggested ideas. I'm not going to be surprised if I see some more coming up here. And if you have questions, again, remember to put the Q in front of it so I can asking a question as opposed to making a comment. Let me keep going, and I want to show you some examples of products and services that would demonstrate the task unification pattern. And the reason we like to show examples is that it kind of helps your mind sort of form a better picture of what this technique is all about. And so take a look at this first example. What you see here, of course, is a piece of fruit, an apple. But if you look closely at the label here, you notice that it's got the little barcode for scanning. But what's also true about this label is that when you get home and you put this under water to wash it, That label dissolves and turns into a soap appropriate for washing fruit. Pretty cool. I love this one too. This is a baby's pacifier. If you have children or have watched your nieces or nephews, you know that the child's fever is always the biggest concern. And so this is a baby's pacifier that keeps track of the temperature of the baby. Very, very clever. This is a neat example that, honestly, I've never seen it in the U.S., but I understand they use it in Australia or places where you have to change your car tire, but the roads are uneven, and you're kind of in a unlevel situation. You can't use a traditional jack. And so look at the task unification here. The exhaust has been used to fill up this bladder here, this balloon, and lift the car up. What I like about this example is here you've recruited something that most people wouldn't think of as a useful component. I mean, the exhaust of a car is typically something you want to get rid of. You don't want it hanging around. And it's been nicely recruited here to do this job. We also see a lot of task unification in marketing communications. So, things like billboards on the side of taxis or buses or park benches. This one is particularly clever use of task unification because not only is the bench looking like the Kit Kat bar, which worldwide I guess is the most popular candy out there, but it also looks like the candy bar. The back of the bench looks like the familiar bars of a Kit Kat. And I just love this example. It's a great example of the task unification technique. Here's a feature that is appearing in cars, I think originally by Nissan. And what it is, it's called the Easy Fill Tire Alert. And the way this product works is that as you're filling up your tire with air, the difficulty is knowing when to stop, when you've reached the correct pressure. And especially in cold weather, it's hard because your hands are down there and you're freezing. You want to get back in your car. Well, what this clever little thing does is this. When you reach the correct tire pressure, the horn of the car signals you, goes beep, beep, to let you know that you've reached the right pressure. I love that idea. It's taking a simple component right there, close to you, close by, and now using it for a new use, an additional use. Okay, and this one probably is always gets the most accolades or surprises. And here's the story behind this one. Some of you may have seen this. This is a subway station in Korea. If you can see, if you know you're Korean, there's a little subway sign there, and that is in the Korean language. And I've actually had students in my class that have been to this exact subway station. But look at the walls of the subway station. They've been made to look like the walls of a grocery store. Now here's what happens. The commuters on their way home from work take their phone, scan the items they want. That list is texted to and paid for to their local grocery store, and they pick it up on the way home. Wow. Pretty cool idea, pretty convenient. The walls of the subway station have been recruited to form the basis of a point of sale for a grocery store. Pretty interesting idea. I love that idea. Now, one comment here, one common mistake that I want to point out to you. A lot of times people think task unification is just taking a bunch of tasks and putting it together on one platform. That is not task unification. That is bundling. And bundling is a great product strategy for many situations. A lot of products you see around you today have a bundling aspect to them. I would argue the iPhone and the smartphones today have a bundling aspect to them. They're a bundle of different apps and functions. The smartphones also have a lot of task unification in them. So what's the difference? Well, with the bundle, I hope you can see that all you're doing is taking a bunch of independent functions and putting them on one co-located platform. It's not task unification because it doesn't pass this test. The test is, does some component on the Swiss Army knife have an additional function, and not just its old function, but now some new function, something it wasn't originally designed to do. And in the case of the Swiss Army knife, no, I don't think the Swiss Army knife is necessarily creative. And I love them, I have one, but as a creativity example, I would say it doesn't pass the test. So just be careful not to make this probably the most common of mistakes with this tool, task unification. Now, I'm going to check over in the comment section. Any questions here? Let me just check through and ask Darla, if you see any questions, go ahead and pop them in. I am looking here. Go ahead and post if you have any questions, because we're going to wrap up here. I like to keep these office hours to relatively short, so that we make efficient use of everybody's time here. And if you don't have questions now, you're certainly going to be welcome to post those to me later, either via email at drew@drewboyd.com. You can also watch this video over in YouTube, or just contact me through LinkedIn. So that's the task unification tool. If you want to learn more, one thing that I want to call your attention to is my courses here on LinkedIn Learning include one called Thinking Creatively. And the task unification tool is covered in detail, as well as all 5 techniques of the SIT method and some other bonus content as well. So be sure to check that out if you haven't. And that's really it. I wanted to tell you that next week, the same time, Tuesday, February 15th, at 11 Eastern Time, I'm going to have another live stream. But this time, we're going to get into the pandemic. Creativity lessons from a pandemic. I think you'll find this fascinating. There has been a lot that we can learn from this good old pandemic. So I just want to call your attention to a couple of things. Be sure to take a listen to my podcast. And also, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and follow me here on LinkedIn. It's really helpful when you follow me, because then I can get information out to you about these live streams and new courses and things like that. So it's been a pleasure to have you today. Be sure to join us next week, and have a great rest of your week.